There's a museum flying in the sky.
Yeah.
They've got a little Dalek. 4 episodes fly by. It's a bit bland, but messes around with time. So let's go and visit the museum. Just me, my mate Ben, and I.
Sorry, Sam, I'm gonna have to leave. This is...
No, hey, Ben! Come back. I just wanted a new Doctor Who opening theme. Is that so bad?
It's been good for 50 years. You really want to change it? You...
I think I was onto something there, yeah. I really do.
What about the episode's not about a museum, Sam?
Oh, yeah, that's a problem. I'll have to come up with other stuff. Hello, Ben. Thank you for joining me back for the Space Museum.
Hello.
You're my first repeat guest. How's that? Is that anything?
Yes. I'm his favourite. This clearly means something. I see patterns where they very clearly exist.
Just hanging with the boys. Super statically.
So you were surprised when I mentioned the take on this that parts 2, 3, and 4 are a parody of the usual story?
Ooh. You're going to have to win me over on that, I think.
Well, I'm not the man to win you over. On the DVD, Rob Shearman.
Rob Shearman?
Yeah, he's talking about it, and I recommend it to anyone who hasn't seen it, because it's quite short. It's kind of more interesting than the episodes.
Poor old Space Museum. No one likes the Space Museum very much. I quite like the Space Museum. No one really wants it. It's sort of this cheap, unloved thing right in the middle of the William Hartnell years. And it hasn't even got the decency to have been wiped.
Oh yeah, defending the museum.
Yeah.
New series Doctor Who writer provides a personal and robust defence of this often overlooked story.
Yeah, and I do agree with him that was the intention, but I also heard that quite a few jokes from this were cut out, so I do kind of think that the comedy is a bit stifled.
Wow. I've given this one watch in perspective, and I did not think about it nearly as much. My ears are open.
It is really funny that everyone agrees that part 1 is pretty good because it's almost new series stuff. It's messing around with time.
Oh yeah, this is the first time ever that Doctor Who does a timey-wimey thing.
It just has 3 problems, and those problems are parts 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah, it really does seem to run out of its own premise. I'd say even like 15 minutes into the actual museum. The Space Museum isn't really about the Space Museum.
Yeah.
Which is bizarre. It's just a background.
I think it's also because the really interesting time stuff is literally just to set up the stakes. It's got a fair bit in common with Planet of the Giants in that they both kind of have gimmick to what would be simple stories otherwise.
It doesn't know how to further that opening stakes. It just ends up treading water, and that is episodes 2, 3, and 4. Thank God we're only doing episode 1 and 2 today.
They're trying to avoid this fate for the rest of the actual story, and the joke is that they're just arguing about how to avoid it.
Doctor Who and the self-fulfilling prophecy.
The message is you shouldn't just be worrying about the future all the time because you'll just make it worse or you'll just get nothing done. There's still quite a few funny bits in part 2.
That's quite a routine message for sci-fi, for time travel sci-fi, but it's still fairly profound. As a result, though, because you learn you don't get anything done, they don't get anything done, so it's not the most exciting story. And then when the oppressors and rebels story takes over, God, it just kind of abandons it entirely, I think.
I mean, yeah, because there's no more like weird, trippy time stuff. There's just them going, oh, how do we avoid the cases? How do we avoid being in those cases? And then Ian just kind of loses it and just starts fighting whoever he can.
Yeah, he gets a screw loose in this, doesn't he? Which is ironic, because the Time Museum is all about Ian Chesterton losing it. And I won't go in any more detail than that.
I'm looking forward to that one. I've found recently that with a lot of well-known Doctor Who writers, is if you look at the stories that they liked, you can see a lot about how they influence what they wrote later. Because this has got a lot in common with Chimes of Midnight.
Ooh, okay.
Because you have the Doctor and Charlie unable to enter the story, and time won't let them. And then parts 2, 3, and 4 are a bit more comedy orientated.
That's bang on, yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's why I do these. Not just to shit over people's favourite stories, but to actually gain insight and grow to love stories which I have the dislike, or like the Space Museum, I will not cross my mind from one year to the other.
And then you also have Dalek, which opens with a museum full of, and it's got a Cyberman helmet.
A Dalek in a museum? I can't imagine. Oh wow, time for my favourite Hartnell era pastime, working out what to do about the big door. They do it in Keys of Marinus.
Sonic screwdriver hasn't been invented yet, my boy.
We'll have to stare at this door. Part 1 is so atmospheric. A Rebels versus Oppressors battle in a museum is just such a strange mix that it seems forced. It feels tacked on. It feels like they ran out of... like they were treading water.
Yeah, it seems like that.
And then Doctor Who goes into autopilot mode, which is help the rebels. And even at this stage in the show, even at this early stage, that is a bit of a trope.
And that's supposed to be the joke. It's meant to be taking the mick out of that, but I think because quite a few jokes were removed, you can't really tell.
When we were talking about this prior to the recording, I'd kind of had a bit of difficulty with thinking, could Doctor Who do self-parody even in these early years? Because it was so new, and it was doing so much fresh ground. So for it to be that self-aware might be a stretch. But then I remember that The Chase exists.
Yeah, I was about to say, The Chase it's already subverting itself, and it's what I admire about this era is it's already playing with its own stuff and experimenting in a way, as well as some things that we'll get down later, but the fact that they thought of it and tried it even as early as they did.
Here we have my favourite guy, and the highlight, the standout of the story. This is the third ever appearance of the Daleks, back in the peak of Dalek Mania. This is a tease. This is the nastiest tease Doctor Who's probably ever done.
Imagine if they didn't have the Daleks for the next serial. Imagine if Terry Nation had already decided to take his ball and go home, as it were, and this is the last that you get.
The Doctor poking his head out of a Dalek casing is the big farewell to the Daleks.
That's your lot, kids.
I wouldn't be that mad. Oh, I wouldn't get the chase.
But you... Oof. Or Evil of the Daleks, or Power of the Daleks.
True, but also the chase. This one has such a caper vibe all over it. And it doesn't persist. My big relationship with this story, because I actually do have one, is that this is the story that made me want to binge all of the Hartnell era. I hadn't watched Classic Who for about a year or so at this point. I go through stages, I guess. But I was just wowed by how Scooby-Doo it was. By how human this cast of characters feel. That's something you would easily overlook when you think about all those smelly black and white 60s episodes.
Yeah.
You don't expect it to be so down-to-earth and human. Ian and Barbara and the Doctor and Vicky and Susan are more relatable than pretty much everyone in the 80s.
Yeah. Going back to what you said about Doctor Who being... could it be doing parody at this stage? Rob Shearman did point out that it's reaching its 100th episode.
Oh, wow, really?
At this point. Yeah, so when you put it like that, it does make more sense. Plus, we don't really know much about the writer for this.
No, Glyn Jones was a weird one. Here's why I struggle with it being a parody. I'd love it. That's a great take. He was really unfamiliar with Doctor Who when he was approached by David Whittaker. He hadn't watched it, did not know what it was. I don't think he'd even done sci-fi. By removing those jokes, you definitely remove the point.
There are still jokes in it, but they are quite... You need a specific sense of humour to get a kick out of that. And to be fair, I did need the joke explained to me before I could go in and appreciate it.
Yes, I think that's my point. Yeah.
Stories shouldn't really have a warning label.
When you think of classic Doctor Who, you think of it as very earnest. And for the most part it is. It's played quite straight. But this one's in between. This one's riding the line in between. And there's a really good reason for that. It was Spooner who felt that every episode in his tenure should have a different tone. So this was sandwiched in between The Chase and The Crusade. Those are two really different tones.
Yeah.
And as a result, if he didn't want it to be a comedy, he had that power to remove the jokes. So I think it was too similar to The Chase. And as a result, he wanted it to be maybe more intellectual sci-fi. It's my 2 pence.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It's definitely creators butting heads, which has resulted in some great stories over the years. It's an Ambassadors of Death situation where it wants to be fun and goofy, but it was told to behave itself and put in time out.
The timeout corner of Doctor Who stories. What else is in there? All of Trial of a Time Lord. It's literally on trial.
Can I just say how fun Hartnell is in this one? He's going all in. Maybe we're nowhere at all.
I love Hartnell in Series 2. They really... To anyone who says that Hartnell was just grumping, that's all Series 1 for me. Series 2, he is this impish, giggling,
He's Yoda!
Yeah! He's adorable!
And then his last few seasons, he's sad Yoda.
Oh,
Bum bum bum.
great cliffhanger.
This is great.
It's really interesting that Vicky is not as horrified as the other two. She's just working it out.
She seems mystified about the core principle of the show. We're travelling in time? Yeah, we've done it a couple times now, Vicky. No, they've definitely never ran into themselves or even had the possibility of them encountering themselves. Because, of course, the TARDIS can never land that accurately.
Yeah.
So they're always somewhere drastically different for the sake of genre swapping. And this is... Yeah, I think this is more intellectual sci-fi. Which doesn't mesh with comedy, to be fair.
I mean, I think it's possible. Doctor Who has given me the belief that you can mesh anything together. Like, sometimes it's really, really hard, but you might be able to do it.
Imagine if we had a story all about it.
I mean, we kind of do, but then it turns out that the villains are purposefully bad.
I think the concept of anything they do might lead them into this future anyway. That's a comical premise.
And almost nihilistic.
Oh yeah, I don't know, more than a little.
As nihilistic as a 60s kids show could get.
It's not a very good museum though, is it? Let's face reality.
That's the point. Because it's also kind of about like imperialism as well, but it's doing it. It's just taking the mick out of it. All conquering other planets means is you'll kill a whole planet and just leave a museum that no one wants to visit.
Oh god, dimensions and time?
No, stop it. I take back everything I said about this.
Put it back,
No.
put it back. Could you imagine if we put this on and we'd be like, alright, episode 3 and 4, what would we talk about?
We'd just be talking about part 1. I love showing this to my parents because there's just every time they see it, they're still in awe about how little has changed. It's magic.
Rebels? Do we have a "you're an enemy spy" moment coming up?
No, we don't.
Thank God. Maybe that wasn't a trope.
They just want to put them in the museum.
Yeah.
For no good reason.
To be fair, they are travellers in space and time. Did they know that?
Here's the thing. Rob Shearman points out that the Morocks in this, it sounds like morons. It's a stupid name on purpose. But it sounds a lot like the Morax. Like, forget the hybrid and the timeless children. This was taking the mick out of stuff the current era was doing 50 years before.
It would excuse the eyebrows.
Yeah, attack eyebrows.
Star Trek the original series eyebrows. Hey Ben, if you had to bring back the Morocks or the Morax, who would you bring back?
The Morlocks are more fun in how pathetic they are. They can't even take down a bunch of kids.
Sorry, your sentence just gave me more Scooby-Doo vibes. Is it just me alone in that? Like I said earlier, it was that charm that really surprised me with The Hartnell Years and got me to watch all of it. And now, I don't know about you, it's one of my very favourites.
Yeah, me too. It is becoming right up there, especially Series 2. It's just so much fun.
If we want to get out of here,
Well, we can't stay here, Barbara, can we?
and going out of here might be just what we're not supposed to do.
Perhaps if we wait until we're taken out, that might change the future.
Perhaps, my dear, if we do nothing in the story, we can leave the story.
I love this whole exchange basically about Vicky suggesting something, the Doctor saying, no, we shouldn't do that. And then they eventually just do what Vicky says anyway.
Would we get more stories like this if you hired people who weren't familiar with Doctor Who or actively didn't like Doctor Who? I always like to question that sometimes. What kinds of stories would you get from writers who weren't that passionate about the gig? You'd get a different point of view. You would. Oh, but Glyn Jones, did he write for Doctor Who again? I'd be surprised.
Sorry, this is the funniest thing I think in this episode. They want their trust and they want them to help them, so they'll capture 2 of them.
I think when you think in your head, what's this Doctor Who thing? It's kids sci-fi. One of the first things that comes into my head would be some kind of museum in space. It's a very, very easy idea and a pure idea. I was once involved in a fan reading of The Chase, and I played Count Dracula, and I was very proud of it. And then I kept inserting him in the episodes afterwards. So Dracula followed them along to the Mechanoid City. He was a big player. He was a big player in it.
Betty's been captured.
Captured.
By whom?
I don't know. Those people we saw, I suppose.
Oh, Vicky, you're just letting your imagination run away with you.
She's got it right. Ian's just playing around. Barbara's freaking out. No one's helping. If we're talking about rebels versus oppressors, then yeah, that's a Doctor Who tale as old as time. The Sunmakers, the Daleks. Yeah, there's definitely ample stuff for it to be parodying. I've got no problem with that. It's that it's a secret satire approach can excuse anything.
You've got to be wary, otherwise you end up saying something like, it's shit on purpose.
Yes.
Which is not a great defence.
I call them all. I am the master.
Hartnell just said he was the master.
Get on the wiki. Get on the wiki.
Did I just hear that right? Okay, cool. I tapped a lot of things on my keyboard. Oh, I've turned on the information track on the DVD. So I'm getting fun facts every second. Do you want to hear some?
Oh, cool.
Vicky's holding the gun in a way which is... Oh, no, this is the commentary. We can't commentate over a commentary.
I don't think there's any joke here at this point. I think it's just building tension.
The story has run out of quips, for sure. There's going to be cute character moments because it's this TARDIS team. You'd struggle to not. But
there's going to be Ian being unintentionally funny by attacking people.
Russell was a weird actor. Can I just say that? Like he's playing conventional action man, but you always get flashes of him being like a genuinely weird bloke, which I love. The parody, safe to say, has run dry.
But yeah, it's interesting they've mentioned this empire has like collapsed. This is just a museum full of dead things that are just moving around because they've got nothing better to do. And yeah, that's like that theme of things being past their best. You do see a lot in like Rob Shearman's work.
I think it's really funny that they've just apprehended and arrested these guys for visiting their museum.
Yeah, it's very suspicious behaviour.
They can't even comprehend that somebody would want to come and visit. Now, what do you think of this? Oh my... I tell you what, Rob Shearman, I'm sorry I doubted you. I'm laughing my ass off over here. It's just that your comedy story, it gets a little bit boring, which isn't a good thing for a comedy story to be.
Yeah, part 3 is where The comedy really screeches to a halt. And then part 4, it's kind of interesting in its philosophy. The funniest part in part 3 is the computer, because it's so bored. It sounds so bored.
I think it's a bit of a stretch to expect the everyday viewer, especially a kid, to grapple with this.
Yeah.
All in all, whether it's a satire or not, I just wanted to see more of the museum.
Fair.
And I know that's a really superficial complaint.
It has a lot of potential as a creature feature.
That'd be great. An old Doctor Who exhibition, if you will. I'm starting to question if there is a bad Hartnell story.
Celestial Toymaker, from what I've heard.
Maybe that's a satire too.